So it looks like we on, peoples. We are on. Got a new fancy setup and be switching back and forth. And we're gonna chitter chatter. Hope everybody's doing well today. We're gonna do a bit of a follow up and waiting for a few more folk to get on before I show my face. Show my face, show my face, show my face. I got a bit of a different vibe happening today. More of a fireside chat thing, you know? So let's get some more. Anybody here, just say hello. And here we go. It's 2:01. And hey, here we are. Here we are. Just turn this camera around a bit right there. And I have some headphones on, but which I'm going to take off right now. And don't know why that's back there. Okay. Yeah. I had a lav on a minute ago. Volume is a little low, so let's fix that situation. Okay, how's that? I subbed to you yesterday, Big Mac Miller Light. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you subbing. Any questions you have with regards to anything, just about, I think I'm old enough to answer them. I like to believe my eyeballs tell me I'm old enough. Lord knows, getting old is overrated, folks. Aging is overrated. Don't be in a rush, youngsters. All right, so I'm going to raise this good volume now. Okay, excellent. Thanks for the feedback, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm trying to get a little fancy with my situation here. I tried the a lav out a few minutes ago, and I wasn't quite happy with the with the okay, I'm still getting the situation set because I had a compressor on, so I'm making some equalization adjustments on my. How's that? If you hear any distortion, folks, just let me know. I'm using a Let me erase. Let me pull that back a bit. I'm using a outboard equalizer, an outboard mixer to play with the volume, and I needed to monitor what was happening. So, Big Mac Miller Light, tell me what's happening in your world, man. Let's talk, brother. Being that you and me are the only two right now, talk to me, man. What's happening other than this coronavirus thing? We're leaving that, you know, out of the conversation today because it's like my governor said that it's the great equalizer, and that is very, very true, man. It's like this thing is no respect to persons right now, Jack. So I hope that you are keeping safe in the midst of all of this. And I do appreciate you again for tuning in, man, honestly. And let's see how many got. One. And so we will wait for a few more to tune in. But again, if you have any questions with regards to the discussion today, which is what we're covering, is mastering outside of the box, if you will. Forgive me if I'm going back and forth. I'm trying to get my bearings here with this new setup, but I'm mastering outside of the box. Had a bit of questions and criticisms coming in from a few folk that I wanted to address, and just so that we understand. Okay, I'll answer your question in a minute, Big Mac. But I think a lot. I think like I had one criticism from someone. Postmastering chat. Okay, got you. I had a question from well, a criticism, if you will, from someone stating, and this is no, shout on the guy. I suggested that he clarify what it was that he was saying in his criticism of the last video. But my thing is that, and I believe this strongly. If you have to criticize someone about what it is that you're viewing, you should, like, for instance, Quincy Jones right now could tell me to shut up, and I automatically would close my mouth. Why? Because he just knows more. He's seen more. He's gone through more than I have gone through in my lifetime. So it's out of respect for the man and what he knows that I would be quiet. But here on YouTube, anyone can voice their opinion, which I respect. But at least if you have to share information, have it come from a perspective of education, or sharing to the community at large your personal experience as opposed to just criticism. So I'm going to revisit that topic. And Big Mac Miller, right now it's just you and me. So what I'm going to do is answer your question. I'm pretty curious about the importance of A to D, D to A conversion, hmm and post mastering chain. Listen, let's just be very, very clear on one thing. Um, it's extremely important, and that's why I'm kind of surprised that the quality of Tascam stuff, because Tascam has always been known as not such a pro company, if you will. I mean, they had their pro division back in the day, but their high res recorders are really, really good. Even that one that I showed in the video. So, how important is the A to D, D to A conversion? Extremely, extremely, extremely important. I can't stress that enough. Um, you know, if you're gonna start doing outside of the box mastering, and if you have the budget for it, I would get conversion by companies like Apogee, MyTech Digital. There's another company called Benchmark. You could look into, but invest in really good converters. That's, to me, that's the most important thing. Is that you invest in quality conversion, so that the integrity of your mixes are maintained from the beginning all the way to and through the entire process. If you're going to be streaming um, your music, or if a client, if that's their end game, is to be on iTunes or Spotify, if you will, you got to make sure that you have a tight quality control thing happening in the entire chain, from the pre-production to the recording, to and through the mix, all the way to and through to outboard mastering. Skimping at any one of those chains is like, compromising the end product, if you will. So if the goal is to be streaming on iTunes, they have a requirement. Um, yes, you said Antelope Pure 2. Not sure though. Yes, no, Antelope. They're another good company. Another really good company that you could consider in that bunch. They're really good. They have really high end conversion in their interfaces, as well as outboard clocking and conversion. You know, you would need again. I just want to stress that you can't skimp. Skimping is the dangerous thing. If you feel that you can't add outboard conversion, okay, it's just not in the budget for you. Okay, you've invested in really good EQ chain, you've invested in a really good limiting chain, and now you don't have enough money remaining for some good conversion, then I would suggest that you purchase that Tascam DA3000. It's $900, but the converters in that thing are ridiculous, man. I mean, they sound absolutely awesome. So it just makes sense that if you don't have the budget for one, then you invest in the other. That's what I would do. I would say, okay, my first choice would be output conversion. Why? Apogee has been in the game for a while. MyTech Digital has been in the game for a while. They know what they're doing when it comes to that. Um, um, Aside of that, then I would have to, say just go with the task scam to start out. If you want to add conversion later, you can, because you could add conversion via, you could come out, maybe analog, I mean digital, if you add a converter in the future. Analog to digital, come out digital into the task scam, and then come out analog into your monitoring so you can hear what you're doing if you're using a dual system, if you will. That's an outboard 2 track, recording system that's going to produce your high res master. So keep those things in mind. But to start, if you don't have the budget, then that DA3000 recorder is definitely something to consider, in your mastering chain. Okay. I'm gonna revisit the my opening statement, if you will. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna read you the comment that I received from the gentleman about me being wrong about something. I don't know what I was wrong about, but I asked him to explain himself, and I was saying also that if anyone has a criticism of what I'm doing, that's fine. I'm a big boy. I could take lumps, but you got to know what you're talking about at the same time. I mean, I think I've been in enough mastering situations to know the flow is pretty much the same, and without getting too far ahead of what I wanted to share about his statement, I'm gonna just turn my attention to some questions, and let's say Forever Lows. Okay, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Would I need to get a stereo pair of EQs for outside of the box mastering? Yes, you would need. And nowadays, man, I mean, the options are unlimited. Um, in terms of affordability, those Clark Technics are nice. They're based on the EQ, the Puretex from back in the day. Puretex was so now I'm stepping outside the cover wagon. Having been in a room with one once upon a time, um, those things used to get so hot. Man, I'm not lying to you. I used to watch guys that would warm their coffee cups on them. Okay, because those tubes would get very, very hot, but they're also big and deep, and you got to see the size of the cathode tubes in them. But I used to joke and say, man, you can almost toast bread on those things as hot as they are. But nowadays, the modern iterations of them, by both Warm Audio as well as Clark Technic, very, very good options and highly affordable. I'm gonna get into that discussion as well in a few moments, but I'm gonna take another question. Ninja 6485. Hey man, how are you? Hope all is well. Hope you're staying safe in these weird and crazy times. But let's see. Your question says the DBX Quantum is pretty affordable and seems to have a reputation for having great converters. If you have the ability to send your signal out, spit of AES, etc. Okay, I'm not sure what the quantums are. And okay, here's my take on equipment purchases with that I think everyone should consider. Okay, DBX has been in the business of BCA chips since the day of the flood. Okay, that's their thing. Apogee has been in the business of making quality conversion. That's their thing. MyTech Digital conversion. That's their thing. Otari, the company that used to manufacture tape machines, that's their thing. I don't, without criticizing the quantums, I've never used them. Would they be the first choice I would make? And if you've used them, if you could share your experience with everyone here, I'd appreciate it. But would it be my first choice for conversion and digital to analog and analog to digital conversion? No, because that's not their game. You know what I mean? You knew that you could count on Michael Jordan to make that clutch shot. So who gets the ball last? Michael Jordan, because he's the guy. You know, if you're a New York Knicks fan, you want the Pat Ewing back in the day to take the last shot because he's the guy. You know, certain things for certain circumstances. And DBX is not necessarily known for their digital conversion, so I wouldn't reach for them. That's just my thing. But if you have any experience with them, I'd appreciate if you could share with everyone. Okay. Okay, you said, okay, let's go. That was Ninja's thing. Looking at the task game right now is interesting. Yes, it is. And thanks, bro. Okay, that was from Forever Los. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. I wish there was a way I could, interact, verbally with you guys. But yeah. Right now, if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name, just forgive me. Big Mac Miller. I have a pair of, yeah, it's a Clark Techno EQPs, and they warm the sound, but narrow the stereo field a bit. Perfect for drums, bass, vocals, and vocal bus. Yeah, equalization is very specific to circumstances. You could use them. They were considered Okay, when PureTech made those EQs, again, I'm dating myself by saying this. It was based on the notion of program equalization. Now, in the day, television would have or stereos. If you are as old as I am, and your parents had a hi-fi stereo, high fidelity as it used to call it in the day, it only had a bass and a treble knob, and essentially that's what the PureTech is: good bass boost and high-end boost. You can narrow the Q bandwidth, but then you're kind of getting into a gray area if you don't know what you're doing, because if you scoop too much of the mids out, then it's going to be mid thin, So it's good for, like you said, maybe just warming up things like a drum bus, or maybe just brightening up the vocals, giving the vocals a little bit of air. But you got to be really careful, man, when you're trying to use it in a stereo mastering situation, because it doesn't, it might not treat the low mids the way you want. That's why PureTech also had a mid specific program, mid specific equalizer, the MEQ. I forget if anyone wants to chime in who knows the exact model by PureTech, but I think it was an MEQ5. Don't quote me on it, but I think it was a mid-range. It was a mid-range specific equalizer, because they knew that the program equalizer didn't have, the mids in mind. It was for bass. It was for treble, or treble as we used to call it back in the day. But bass and the highs. You would treat. Give it a little bit of air at the top and a little bit of bump at the bottom. That's what you were getting from it. So, you might need to be very careful if you're going to use it in an actual mastering situation, because you might be robbing, your mix of the mids at the same time. Okay, that's correct. Los, like Carlos. Carlos. Okay, my brother, I got you. Thanks, man, for the correction. All right. Okay, okay. I hope I shed a little light to you. That was for Mac Miller, Big Mac Miller. And here's another one from Marshall Fanichuelo. Fanciuolo. Okay, correct my Italian if I'm wrong, my brother. But he asks, I've just recently added a pair of warm EQPs into an API 529. Okay. API 529. Are the 529s, correct me, is that the compressor? Because if so, listen, anything API is the bomb diggity as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? Yeah, but you got, you have a pretty good chain if you're using the those in conjunction with that. I mean, it's like the best of both worlds, you know. I'm not sure how you're faring with it and whether or not you in what circumstance you're using it. But again, you have some a pretty good chain right there, you know. Um, oh, you're using it on the mix bus, and this is for Marshall again. Oh, yeah. I mean that. I mean, listen. You know what? The good thing about outside of the box mastering, if you will, is that you create your own sound. You know, in the end, I mean, with this coronavirus, I said I was going to even talk about it, but if you were a person that introduced, introduced, uh, um, entertained clients, you're giving them your sound. So your sound is your sound. That's your intellectual property, if you will. You know what I mean? And I mean, however you used it, that's what clients come back for. But the good thing about outside of the box mastering is like you can mix, match, and create your own situation. And that's to me like having the best of both worlds, if you will. So that's the one plus about being able to say, okay, well, I don't like the way the API sounds, so I'm gonna swap it out for something different. And when you say there's something different, the options are limitless. Because what may work for one song may not work for the other. You notice if you've ever gone to a mastering studio, they don't just have one EQ. They got several. Because rock or guitar driven music may benefit from whatever it is that an API EQ gives versus a Neve EQ. You know what I mean? So the good thing with doing this thing outside of the box is that the possibilities are limitless, virtually only limited by your pocket, your pocketbook, if you will. So yeah, man, that sounds like a good chain you have there with the warm and the APIs. Oh, my little baby girl just waited and gave me a thumbs up. Okay, mama, I love you, sweetie. Okay, she don't know a thing I'm talking about. Thumbs up, that's pretty. Warms my heart. All right. Um, Mac Miller says he didn't like what I liked about on your. Okay, we'll come back to your statement, Mac. And mm-hmm. Okay, Marshall, were you talking about the 500? Yeah, that API 20. That listen, anything API, like I said, is the bomb diggity. Period. Full stop. Ain't no need to even talk. As soon as you reach for it, yes, that's the thing. You know, man, think of the amount of music. Like I was at AES, right? And I was at AES in November or October rather, and I was right at the booth when Stevie Wonder um popped in, and I mean he touched the console. They had the classic console with the round knobs. I mean he touched the console. It's like his familiarity with the whole console because so many records that he's made were made on the API. I mean, that's, oh my God, what in the heck has happened? Okay. Okay, sorry for the delay. There's a connection. There's a connection thing happening. Oh, for crying out loud with this. Blasted. Okay, am I still streaming? Excellent connection on that end. So, guys, just do me a favor and tell me if I'm still with you, if you're still with me. Okay, this thing blacked out for a second. Okay, it just blacked out for a second. So it says I'm still streaming. It still says excellent connection. And just, say hi just to let me know that I'm not blabbing to myself. But yeah, anyway, back to the thing about Stevie Wonder and API. I mean, listen, the API is responsible for countless hit records. So anytime you reach for any of that equipment, you can't go wrong. Okay? Sorry for the delay. There's a connection thing happening here. I don't know. I changed this. Still here for okay. Thank you, thank you. You know, this whole live streaming thing is a pain in the behind. Sometimes and now with YouTube, they're asking you to use OBS software, and I'm trying to up my game a bit. And I did all these tests all week, and I get to the day, and then, you know, which will bring me to another statement. I had my assistant ask me, like, why do you have two of everything? And you ask any engineer, whenever you buy in pairs, because if something fails, like for instance, this just failed. I got one camera, it failed. I don't have a backup, and look, it's failing again. Okie dokie smoky. This is a pain in my backside. This is crazy. This is crazy. So yes, I'm hoping the audio is still there, and let me know if I pop back in. I'm good. It was my device. Yeah, but it's saying excellent connection on my end, but I'm not certain what has happened. And yeah, it says I'm still streaming. So 27 minutes live. So if there's a problem, guys, just put it in the comments. I'll just keep blabbing. And if you have any further questions, I guess this thing is taping me. Hang on a second. It says that I'm still on, so I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, we'll get this remedied real quick. And I hate that this is happening. Honestly, this is crazy. But let's see. Let me switch scenes, and let's go back and see. Nope, I'm still hung up here. Video capture device, and I'm going to switch devices real quick, but I'm going to maintain the audio. So here we go. Okay, so hopefully I'm here now, and click OK, and let's resize this a bit. And you guys see me? I switched devices back to my webcam, so you have a different perspective now. And yeah, this is just a pain in the behind. So let me go back, and let's see. Okay, see, this is why you got yep. Oh my god, dude, I'm telling you. You ask anybody who works, I have a very low tolerance for stuff going out. I'm serious, man. Especially in the middle of sessions. I had the audio, but the video is frozen. It's gonna come back in a minute. It's a bit of a delay. I had to switch cameras. I'm on my webcam again. But yeah, man, I have a very low tolerance for when stuff goes out, and that's why I buy two of everything. You look at my rack, I got two of everything because stuff happens. You know, stuff happens in the middle of sessions. I switched cameras, so I'm on my webcam right now, which is hopefully a better connection. You guys just let me know if you see me on the webcam. I'm gonna just take again. Yeah, well, according to YouTube, I'm back. But yeah, so you should have the video. It's gonna switch over in a minute if it has. You guys just let me know if you see right behind me the two Focusrite um, preamps, because that's the perspective of the webcam. You'll be seeing the two Focusrites over my will be video right. Okay. All right. So just okay. The video's good now. Thank you. I appreciate it. You see, but I'm back to my original statement about why I buy two of everything. Because stuff just has a way of messing up at the wrong time. So you're back. All is well. Thank you, Roger, my brother. I appreciate you. Yeah, man. But yeah, stuff, man, has a way of just jacking up, and don't let it jack up in front of the client, man. If it happens like that, that's like that's like landing the plane but flying it right into the tower. I mean landing the plane but crashing into the tower after you land it. I mean, you got to have two of everything. So it just reinforces what I said to my assistant some time ago. I was like, listen, you buy two of every, cuz one fails, you got the other one to go right too, you know what I mean? Because stuff happens, as evidenced by this, webcam, my fancy webcam, mind you, so-called fancy. The stuff, you see how fancy it is, right? It was a GoPro actually, and look what happens. I got thing plugged in and all that hype around GoPro. But anyway, yes. So we're back. We're still talking about mastering outside of the box. And Ninja 6485. Um, you could just say Ninja 9021. Whoa, 90210. That's a quite expensive zip code, my brother. Okay, but yes, the quantum is the answer to the TC. Oh, really? The DBX quantum is their answer to the finalizer, which I did not like. For a, it's in the Bobcats Mastering audiobook. If anyone is interested, okay. Bobcats, if he's endorsing it, I guess he, must like it for some reason or another. I think you have to sit with a piece of equipment, um, and and um, and work with it. Because in working with a piece of equipment, you'll know if it's happening for you or not. I mean, that's just you know par for the course as you're working with something. I mean, you can't make yourself like a particular piece of equipment because it has to work in the circumstance that you're presenting it with at the moment. And it either works or doesn't. If it's not working, then it's not working. Then you got to find an alternative means to an end, if you will. Um. Okay, folks. I am me. I'm always getting it. Ah. Okay. That's good. That's good, brother. But the finalizer. Why did I not like the finalizer? Okay, for a number of reasons. I mean, it was a quick fix. And then I'm gonna take it back. I'll take that back. Let's go 10 giant steps backwards. When I first encountered the finalizer, I think my biggest turnoff with it was, I think at the time I was a little heavy-handed, if you will, in using it, and the EQ and the compression, and still sort of getting my bearings on multi-band compression. You know, maybe if I sat with it now and excuse me, excuse me, and you know, was a little less heavy-handed, as opposed to before, I would probably appreciate it a little bit more. That was one. Two, anytime, and I have had purchases from several European manufacturers. Anytime, again, and the finalizer was quite expensive when it came out. When you're buying equipment from a manufacturer like TC Electronic, which is, I think, a Swedish-based company at the time. I know they have an American distributor, but their stuff fails. And right now, I have a pair of failed Dyne Audios, which is also, I think, part of the whole TC Electronic clique. The stuff is expensive as all get out to get repaired, you know? So if this is a part of your flow, and then suddenly you don't have two of them because they're god awful expensive, and you're relying on this one thing, and you're in the middle of working, and suddenly a channel goes out. Bang, you fiddle, change the cable, channel don't come back. You got an expensive repair proposition on your hand. It impedes your ability to work, if you will. So it's the finalizer is a good tool to use. One, I don't think it's an end all be all. Two, um, I think you could probably put together a better chain outside of the box than an all-in-one solution in the box. And that's just my opinion on it. Everyone's mileage may vary. You know, I'm not saying it's bad, but I think it takes some time to learn what it sounds great on, and what it doesn't. It's that simple. So the finalizer is the finalizer. Um, okay, let's go. Another question. So this is to prevent these things from happening to your tracks. Oh yeah, that was a joke. Yeah. You back. Okay. Any further questions before I get to my friend who had the criticism of my last video? I'm gonna read his comment verbatim. And like I said, I'm a big boy. I can take lumps and bumps and criticisms. It's just that if you come out your face, you must know what you're talking about, or you have to, you know, expound or elaborate. I used to have a professor that used to say, he always wanted, please elaborate on it. You have to be able to elaborate on what it is that you're talking about. So I'm going to go to his comment, and I hope he's online, man, because I really want to have a discussion because I want to know what you talking about. Brother made some serious statements, and I'm gonna read it because some of them I was kind of chuckling at. You know, boy, when you're on YouTube, you really meet some people. I've had people call me some names, and you know, one guy, I had to block this guy because he thought I was, I mean, Warren ain't no punk. I'm a Harlem born and Harlem bred boy, and he was trying to clown me on the regular. And see, and you say if you push the clowning button too far, man, I'll clown you harder. And if I clown you harder, you may not like it, and it turns into a whole nother thing. So I was like, let me just block you before I clown you in a way that you don't like. So, but this guy had some. I mean, he wrote me at least 5 paragraphs of stuff that I said that was wrong. So I'm gonna address that. Um, so let me just read you his comment. Okay. I don't want to bash anything those, but you said something incorrect. Bash anything those is improper grammar. Okay. Can't be bashing anything those. But if you start your statement out with, I don't want to bash you, then you are apparently setting out to bash me. Okay. But that's all good. In the old days, mastering was one or more of the following only exclamation point. The first thing was to bring levels into the right. The first thing was to bring the levels to the right level for media it was going on to. He was partially correct. Now, bring levels to the right level for the media it was going to. That's debatable. Why? Because if you were mastering for vinyl, yeah, you had to be a little careful with certain frequencies and the levels of certain frequencies because it could cause the stylus to skip on the cutting lathe. And if the stylus skipped, then that piece of acetate was just wasted. And acetate masters cost a boatload of money. So, I mean, you're partially correct. Um, the He said the first thing was to bring levels to the source or media it was going on to. What are you talking about? What media? Okay, if you're talking about mastering for vinyl, you're mastering for vinyl. The only other media was cassette. Now, I'm going to explain the whole mastering for both cassette and vinyl in a moment. Because if that's what you were talking about, if you're tuning in, then okay, we'll have that discussion. But this is the way we're going to have that discussion. If you're going to say that you're mastering for cassette or for vinyl, there was a protocol that had to be followed that apparently he wasn't too keen on, and I'm going to enlighten him. I asked him to enlighten himself. He didn't respond to what I asked. So I'm going to enlighten you as to how that would happen. Okay? Okay. And the second, this is a continuum of his statement. The second was changing the dynamic range to fit the output source, such as cassette tape, FM, or AM radio. Cassette tape, FM, or AM radio, which told me he was about my age, and I am over 50, okay? For full disclosure. Cassette tape, um, FM radio, and AM radio, TV, LP, or 45. Bro, you are wrong on so many levels. It's a shame. Okay, so let's just pause for a minute. Okay, I'm going to come back to the rest of his criticisms. Okay, let's just be clear on one thing. When you were mastering, okay, I'm going to show you something in a second. If I was mastering, and I have mastered for cassette, and I am a boomer that was at the beginning of mastering for CDs. When CDs were first introduced, I came in mastering for vinyl and cassette, transitioned in the 90s into CDs. Okay, let's just go through the protocol. I'm mastering something for a client. I would have to provide a 2-track master of a 1/4 inch at 15 inches per second, or a 1/2 inch master at 30 inches per second, biased a particular way. I was a youngster, okay, and my job primarily as a if you want to call a guy that was a tape op, all I did was set up, and you had the mixing engineer and you had the recording engineer. I was the guy that set up the mics, would have to bias a machine, demagnetize the machine, etc., etc. There was a protocol and a process you would follow. 15 inches per second was your master. If it was 1/4 inch, some machines, I'm not sure, I think maybe the Ataris, but I worked primarily in smaller studios that had Tascam recorders primarily. 15 inches per second, 1/4 inch, 30 inches per second, 1/2 inch professional at +4 nano dB and 250 what they call nanowebers. Okay, I'm giving you all a whole lot of information that you're going to be like, what are you talking about? But this is in response to what he was saying about mastering and changing levels. You never, ever, and you better not had change the levels in the chain, if you will, if you were mastering for a client. That's just a boneheaded thing. So what would you have to do? How would you have to make sure that what was going into or coming out of the board was at the proper level going to the master? You would have to record what's called a test tone. Most mixing consoles had a test tone oscillator built in. Here are my two that have been with me. They are by a company, Fostex. Okay? 2. These things are these things are not probably. These things are definitely older than most of my audience. Okay? They're over 30 some odd years old. Now, I worked a lot in semi-pro studios versus professional, but all the same, the process was all the same. You would have to send a test tone oscillator if the mastering house required it. They wanted tones at the head of the tape master. The tones had to be at 1K at 0 dB. So that would be the first thing you would send onto the master, the first audio that they would hear. The purpose of that was so that they could calibrate their machine on their end. They're getting a tape from a studio that could be halfway around the world. And I have been in situations like that where I had a session that came from Curacao. How do I know how this guy's machines were calibrated? I only know if he put tones at the head of the tape. So tones were the only measuring rod for which you could say, okay, I know that whatever is coming off this tape afterwards is perfectly calibrated in terms of gain staging, if you will. That's why if you've seen any of my videos on gain staging, it starts at the board. It starts at the preamp. So all those that want a gain stage inside Pro Tools, I mean, the first thing you're speaking into is a mic. Mic goes into the preamp. So you got to make sure your preamp is properly gain staged. How do you know that? You have to gain stage it to negative 18, which is now the standard. In the day, it was 0 dB. So for him to say that, I'm going to quote him, the second was changing the dynamic range to fit the output source is absolutely wrong. 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 Period. Full stop. Why? Because watch this. You can't see it, but this thing is about 30 years old. Okay? Holding up the wrong thing, getting all confused now. But it was a tape time chart. It also had biasing levels on the back and what your levels needed to be. So it was expected that you knew that if you were sending tones out to your master, it was going to be at the level that the mastering house required, especially if you were mastering for vinyl. You needed those tones at the head. There's another protocol that you used to have to wind the tape tails out. Tails out meant that, in opposed to you winding the tape this way, you would have to, fast forward the tape to the end, and you would make sure that the leader tape at the end was red, like the tail light of a car, so that they knew that when they took the tape or the pancake out of the box, if they saw the red leader at the end, they knew, oh, I got to rewind this all the way back to the beginning in order to hear, the tones at the beginning to align their machines. So, I asked him to correct himself, and he didn't. He says he didn't want to bother me with details, but the goals were things like backing sure, or I guess he meant making sure you wouldn't lose the super quiet stuff on cassette due to road noise. My goodness. Due to road noise. Due to road, that's just hilarious. Due to road noise when you had tape on while driving. This is funny. This is hilarious. No, that's just absolutely absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Okay, let's just use the analogy of what he said about losing absolutely low passages. What you would do if you were that concerned about the dynamic range of your material, you would use a compressor expander, which the 165 DBX 165A came into prominence as being one of the ones you would reach for to raise quiet passages, and when they became dynamic or boomy, or if you will, it would compress. Now, with that in mind, let's just say that if you were recording an orchestra, which if you've ever been to the symphony, you would know that you have dynamically loud passages as well as soft passages. How nonsensical is it of you to, okay, well, the passages are quiet now. I'm recording a symphony orchestra, so in order to get above the noise floor, I'm going to raise the preamps right now, or raise the level. Well, how the heck are you going to control the louder passages? You're going to bring it back down? No. What you would have to do is change the bias of the tape. So let's just say if you wanted greater dynamic range out of a tape, companies like Ampex they had a +3 biased tape, and I think they had, and the end of tape was +9. You could bias the tape so that you could get a higher level output from the tape. Of course, if you were trying to be strategic about dynamic range, what you would do if you felt that the violas or violins were too soft, what would you do? You wouldn't raise their preamp. That's nonsensical. You would move the mic closer. Duh. That just makes perfect sense. If you know. You notice that when you go to the symphony as well, that they use certain companies that have certain types of microphones that are highly sensitive and extremely quiet. I think it is DDA, I think, is a company that I see a lot when I go to these venues that have these like pencil-like mics that are very tiny, but they have like a crazy low noise floor, and they're very high in the dynamic range rather of the microphone and versus the noise is great. So you have to choose your equipment for the gig at hand. You don't ever, period. And if you are riding the gain on any recording, if you will, you have to do it judiciously. Heavy-handed or turn it, oh, they loud, turn it up. That's retardedness. You're just not using best practices, if you will, when it comes to um um being an engineer. Period. So him about that road noise business is foolishness. Driving and a lot of the music he's complaining about the music is 70s and 80s. And then he closes out his statement with this, and I'll quote him on this one. I should add that I came up in expensive studios using all the gear that is now legendary. Well, good for you. I still own Universal Audio and many other things that most recording artists dream about. Okay. I own a ton of warm audio and Focusrite gear too, and honestly, I think warm audio is better than the old gear it was made to replicate. Well, that's debatable, you know, highly debatable. And again, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But if you're gonna make uh, that statement, then you have to ground it in some degree of fact. And I'm saying to him, you know, give me an example. Don't ever share information with someone that you don't know the full background about. You know, I'd rather yield to someone who knows better than me than not. You know, you can't ask me how to successfully record hard guitar driven music. I'm not that guy. That doesn't mean I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to reach out and pick the brain of someone who does it. That's why I watch Produce Like a Pro, because that's Warren Hewitt's thing. That's his thing. So I learned from him. You know, my thing is jazz. I'm an acoustic guy. I mean, that's what I do. You know, and in the day I came up in gospel, where the gospel that I did was R&B driven, basically, so I can record R&B drums. I know how. Just having been exposed to that genre. But you can't share information that you know nothing about. And I asked him to clarify his statements. He has yet to do. I hope if and when any of you read the comment that he left me, I hope I enlightened you in some way. There was and still is a protocol to this day and best practices when one is mastering for any medium, whether it's streaming or if you're going to be mastering for vinyl these days, which is making a comeback. You can't stick in a highly dynamic Pro Tools master onto a vinyl. It has to go through some severe mastering, including the limiting of your dynamic range if you want to get it onto vinyl. Because, like I said, to cut vinyl is it's expensive. It's a process that requires someone who knows what they're doing and special equipment. And you don't get a second chance when cutting that acetate. You don't get a second chance when cutting that master. If something too dynamic happens that causes the stylus to skip, and it skips, that master is a failed master. You cannot create or replicate from that master. It's damaged because the material is too highly dynamic. Just listen to if you get a chance, and this is something I would advise most younger people that are watching me to do. Buy yourself a turntable. I mean, they're cheap. Buy yourself a turntable. Buy yourself an analog. You can get them for cheap. An analog amp, and listen to music on vinyl. Listen to how it was cut. Listen to the richness that the equipment of yesterday afforded. You know, engineers, from that time. And you're going to train your ears from a different perspective, and then if you get that client who wants a vinyl master made from a limited run, then you know how to present it so that it doesn't screw things up for the client. That's the last thing you want. Okay. All right. So let's go to some questiones. Hey Warren, hope is Avalon, mate, my brother. Good to see you, man. Well, not technically seeing you, but you know what I mean. But no, thanks for tuning in, man. I appreciate you, brother. And have you ever mixed? This is from Avalon. Have you ever mixed with monitors that have ribbon tweeters like the Adams, or had thoughts and opinions? I have a friend of mine, um, an award-winning engineer who swears by the Eves and the Adams. I heard him. I guess it's an acquired taste. You have to sit down and um, let your ears. Excuse me. Let your ears become accustomed to how they sound. I particularly don't care for them. You know. So I mean, I guess, like I said, although I do know that most tweeters are the soft ribbon-like material these days. They're not the plastic cone-like material, or paper. So I understand that they're supposed to be less fatiguing than the plastic piezo type tweeters, and I've heard them, and I guess it's to each his own. You have to get it in your environment. Excuse me. Listen to them in your environment. You like them, you keep them. You don't like them, ding, out the door they go. It's that simple. You buy from a dealer who's going to give you your money back if it's not to your liking. Period. That's the best advice I give to anyone. Because I pro audio shops are invisible. You know, these days you can't go and sit down. You about to part with $2,000 for a monitoring system. You think I'm going to Sam Ash for that? That's crazy. No, no, sir. I sat down when I was buying monitors over $1,000. I'm about to plop $1,000 down on some monitors, okay, and another $500 down on some on a sub. You think I'm gonna just let some novice salesperson fly by night push me into some? No, you have to sit down. So places like Dale Pro Audio, or back in the day Manny's Professional, and then Sam Ash Professional, they had listening rooms. They stick you in the listening room. You bring your mixes with you, on CD. You listen to stuff that you're familiar with. You like it? You can switch between things. You like it? Good. You don't like it? You don't buy it. But those days are gone. So you got to be buying from a dealer that's going to allow you to return it in case, you really don't like it. So that's my advice. I master primarily gospel. Roger 1811 says he masters gospel. I have a few customers there in New York. Okay. We're definitely from the old school. Yes. You're in your mid-50s. Good for you, my brother. Cut your teeth on tape. Yeah. Just want to follow up with you on that situation. Yes, sir. To have that background, I think, is indispensable. I think that's part of why I want to go back to doing things outside of the box. I'm going to reach out to someone, a prominent. I'm gonna have a couple of discussions in the coming weeks with some well-respected mastering engineers. That mastered R&B back in the day, and just want their take on it. But I've had a chance to reach out to some mix engineers, and that are up in age and have come from a point in time where tape was king, and all of them say the same thing. I'm just not. I mix and I can do a Pro Tools mix, but I think I get more when I bring it back through the board. It's just something that's there. So to use Pro Tools as a recorder, that makes sense for people that are familiar with using a board with Pro Tools. It's just that simple. But I mean, I'm just Pro Tools is great. Kids that are learning it nowadays, their perspective is just that of the Pro Tools mixer. Haven't gone into an environment, where where they are spreading 24 channels of Pro Tools out on a board. You know. Oh, Rogers added, yeah, and this is true too. He just says we learn gain structure the right way. Yeah, because if you, dude, I'm telling you, youngsters, I'm gonna tell you one time, you had one chance to screw that up. You screwed up biasing that machine improperly, and you wrote the wrong information on the back of that box as to how that machine was biased for this particular reel of tape. You never worked again. Period. Period. Screw that up. They send you in the room to bias that machine a proper way, and you go and you put the wrong nanoweber reading on the tape flux level on that box. You screwed that up. You got it at 200. You know it's 250 nanometer. You biased it. You had to know how to bias the machines. So that was important because the tape would react differently. You're talking about not zeros and ones. You're talking about voltages. So you got a recording head that's recording audio, but in a voltage fashion. So quite naturally, whatever magnetization is going on the tape itself, you had to make sure that it was properly biased. If you get a chance, go and rummage through a garage sale, and you'll see high bias and low bias cassettes, and chrome versus all that's important because certain tapes respond to music differently, have different noise floors. Like 120 bias cassette tape was notoriously noisy versus TDK SA90, which was a 90 bias tape. So yeah, we learned gain structure much differently, and you couldn't screw it up. You could not screw that up. You either knew it or you didn't. Some people were nerdy like that. And that was, I stayed in my lane. And there was very few opportunities afforded, young men of color. So I didn't mind being the guy setting up microphones and learning about tape machines. All that stuff, I carried over to my own personal business. But it was very important to understand. So yes, we did learn how to gain stage properly. This is why, again, I get back to this whole gain staging thing. And of course, I get people who send me hate mail about that. You don't know what you're talking about, gain staging. Gain staging begins at the source. Hello, here, going into the preamp, there. They all have noise floors, period. So the object and the end game is always to take advantage of the dynamic range. So you have to know the noise floor of your equipment, and you have to know what the cap is on the equipment. Where does it distort? Where's the noise floor? Where's the sweet spot? That's gain staging in a nutshell. Okay, so let's go to some more. This is Avalon Major. He says, back when I used to mix house music in Chicago in the 90s, a lot of underground vinyl presses would have skips and doodle. Yeah. Because you know that bass frequencies, the gap when the stylus is cutting bass frequencies, the gap is wider. And house music by very nature is bass heavy. And it just took one person that didn't have the proper compression setting on the bass to tame it, and that would screw everything up. But then that's the character. Okay, that is a criticism, but also house music started in Chicago, and maybe that's a attribute, that you look back on fondly nowadays. It'd be frowned upon if we did it as a standard practice, but you look back on fondly, yeah, that record, man, every time I got a record from so-and-so's underground cutting lab, it would always skip. That's some of the memories we hold on to. But yeah, It just takes something that's bass heavy to cut that thing too wide and jack everything up. But Mr. Pirate Brain. I love these names, man. I love that, Mr. Pirate Brain. I watch your warm audio reviews. What would be a decent analog setup for mastering house music? Um, Mastering house music, an absolute necessity, um, is a quality compressor of some sort. Now, the warm audio bus comp is a godsend, you know, because if you're let me go back. Thing went up a bit. Let me scroll back down a bit. Um, 1 second. Oh, wow, this went up kind of high. Got a lot of comments coming in, so let me stretch it a bit. Um, let me go. Okay, what would be a decent setup for mastering house music? Nowadays, quality equalization of some sort. Um, that let's just reflect on what I'm using right now. Not doing house, just as an outside of the box mastering solution, which is the two um, warm audio WA73s. On occasion, I will add this unit, okay, which is a JDK Audio EQ 4 band, you know, because it has a lower mid section if I need it. And I like the sound of Neve EQs, period. Now, there's a lot of options you could use in terms of Neve EQs. You could get Heritage, the 500 series EQs. You can get an actual, Neve, AMS Neve EQ. Another option is by the Rupert Neve company. They make decent inductor-based EQs. Sound a lot different from transistor-based EQs, which is, solid state logic, 600 series EQs have a bit of a edge to them, if you will. API EQs are a little bit warmer because they use transformers. So it's a matter of what's working for the music that you're using. If you know you need a lot of fat and girth at the bottom end, then you definitely need a Neve EQ. Some sort of Neve, whether it's by Warm, Heritage, or check this out. I'm going to pop these on the screen. I'm getting a little fancy. Here's some compressor options I'll point to real quick. If you see right here, on the far left is the Chameleon Labs 560. Now that's an inductor-based EQ, which is a very good option. On the cheap option on the transistor side is the DBX 530. If you guys are any of you are into the 500 series, these are cheap alternatives which sound really good. Now, granted, the DBX is a little bit more surgical, okay, and the Chameleon is a little bit more like a Neve, So it depends on what you want for the music that you're talking about. But you're talking about house music. You need girth. The bass is bass heavy. So you want that happening, and also you got to be able to tame that bass at the same time. So, those are two affordable options from an EQ perspective. One more surgical than the other. So if you're doing house music, yes, that would definitely be two good options. Okay, so let's scroll down. Roger said he's 95% outside of the box at this point. Yeah, man, it's a good option, especially if you have to turn in stuff for streaming. Getting a turntable is great advice. Vinyl dynamic range is roughly 80. Yep. But modern, yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. It's giving people a false sense of reality, if you will. You want to separate the men from the boys, if you will. I mean, if you are a guy that has to turn in a master for vinyl, that's why you can't, people like Al Schmidt, who can go between mediums, if you will, from CD to streaming to um, mastering for um, vinyl. He knows how. A guy that has knew the ramifications of the noise floor. We know how to get from above the noise floor. Now here comes Pro Tools affording us greater dynamic range. So does that mean we actually, eradicate our understanding of gain staging and the ability to get decent dynamic range? Nope. The only thing Pro Tools has done for us was giving us better control over what we're able to produce as masters. Now we can master for all mediums. Why? Because we've gone through it all. We can master for cassette as well as vinyl, all the way to and through the streaming. Because we understand the logistics involved with each medium. And we know that every end consumer has a deliverables requirement. Spotify and iTunes included, no different. So that's why I addressed it from that perspective in the video, the original video about outside of the box mastering. Okay, getting a turntable. Yes, so we learned getting. We definitely need specialized mastering. Warren, are you a Produce Like a Pro Academy member? No, I am not. I tune into Warren Hewitt because he has an understanding of a genre that I don't work in. I mean, why would I consume content from a person that is pretty much, not enlightening me? And it's just like reading a book. Enlightening. I always say this to my kids. I'd rather have too many bullets in the gun than not enough. Like if you look at the warm audio thing with Sylvia Massey was like, I got presented with this project on how to record a big man. That's not my thing. So what did I do? These are her words, quote, semi quoted. What did I do? She reached out to Al Schmidt, whose forte is what? Recording big bands. Bing. So I'm not an Academy member of Warren Hewitt. I just consume his content because he's coming from a perspective of something that I don't work on often enough. But I'm not going to make myself illiterate about it either. Like, shout out to the guys at Shred Shed. They're another, guys, I consume their content because they record a lot of guitar-driven music. There are tons of people who are doing genres that I don't do. So I'm going to consume content from things that's going to enlighten me. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to start booking, rock clients or no, that's not my thing. And that's not something I'm interested in doing. I just, consume the content because it enlightens me from a perspective that I'm not working on a daily basis. That's all. But if you know that that's a genre that you want to work in, and you know that you want to get better, Warren Hewitt is the guy. He's the guy. He's the guy you reach out to. So if that academy is going to work for you in the future, then that's who you consume content with. But he's definitely steeped in his ability to record, guitar driven and rock music, and the hows and the whys of how to record the genre. So he's definitely the guy to tune into. Just like Stefan Guy is, he's and Wavy Wayne Wave. Check him out if you're a guy that's into hip hop. These are guys that listen. There's tons of people consuming content producing content on YouTube. A lot of it, just having born the heat of the day, I take with a grain of salt, because half of these guys, if YouTube went away tomorrow, they don't have careers. They've never had a career. They don't have a resume. I'm not saying that from a souped up standpoint, like, oh, I'm great. No, Has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with what can you share that's going to enlighten someone. Warren Hewitt has had a career outside of YouTube. He is bringing his know-how to the platform. You know, Wavy Wayne has a career outside of YouTube. His ability to produce hip hop. I don't consume hip hop, but I like watching his videos because he has he's a young guy, but he has a wealth of knowledge. You know, so you gotta take what people are saying to you with a grain of salt. No, I don't claim to know it all, but I'm the guy. Like I said, the pyramid. I know a whole lot of people at the top, and I cater to the people right here in the middle. You could chase the rainbow. I've always looked at my career in music as this: you're engaged in a marathon, not a sprint. Because I've seen tons of guys that I know that are millionaires in hip hop, millionaires in R&B, have had extremely successful careers with walls of gold and platinum records as well as Grammys. They're penniless, because they focused on being the guy at the top for the moment. No one stays at the top forever. So if you want to have a career, like my thing was this, when and I'm digressing a bit, but and when I first started out, and I wanted to be, in gospel, I was in gospel, and I wanted to own a label. I started a label. You sell enough CDs. If you sold 10,000 CDs at $17 per CD back in the day, if you were smart, you would invest that money. You know how many people were constantly coming to me that had these types of careers? They would do local gigs. They weren't, necessarily had big distributors carrying their merchandise per se, but they had successful careers of selling 10,000, 20,000 CDs. Like Alligator Records. I think a successful record for them, back in the day, was 100,000 sales. That was some serious cash. And if you were smart, you knew to build your business model in that way. Money makes money. When you have more, you can make more if you're smart and you invest it properly. It's just that simple. So I like, again, I'm just, stepping out, a bit, from the main thing to say this: be careful who you consume content from. There's tons of people that look great on camera. That's fine. Who are cranking out videos just to be cranking out so that they could get the YouTube dollar. But if YouTube went away tomorrow, I still have a career. I'm going to be all right. You understand? But there's a whole lot of people out there that's producing, cranking out content because they want that Google dollar. They getting people strung out on their content because that's what they're doing. That's fine. YouTube goes away tomorrow, they go away. They sitting back bagging groceries or something. I'm here to try and share, what I know. So, you could, I got a resume. You can go on the website, look at it. That's all other stuff. Like I said, I've seen them come, I've seen them go. I know that I wanted to build a career for the marathon. That's the important thing. So you could chase, trying to make a beat for Lil Wayne, or you could think about, saving that $100,000 check that you got from selling all them beats and investing it for the future. I've seen people get a whole lot of money that have evaded taxes. Now they want all their gig money in cash. That's crazy. So, again, I digress. Let's get back to the main thing. Produce Like a Pro Academy, I think, is a good thing if you want to learn how to do that genre of music. Yes. Pirate Brain. I don't know where you're working, but this is from Ninja 6485. Working, but maybe more attention to acoustically treating your room and getting your monitor placement set perfectly. Just throwing some ideas out. Now there's a whole lot to be said about that particular topic that maybe I'll address in the future, but I want to stay with the main thing. But that's not a bad idea. what you said, Ninja 6485. Roger in 1811 says the lack of skill with proper gain structure is what's preventing a lot of people from being consistent. Anybody can get lucky, yes. If you can't provide consistent good work, you have to work. You have work to do, and that's true. It's that simple, folks. Even when you're mastering in an outside of the box circumstance, them needles. I said this in a video. uh, those meters are there for a reason. Even the ones in the Pro Tools mixer, they ain't saying negative 18 dB full scale for nothing. Okay, so those of you who are unfamiliar without, I mean, let's just take for instance. Okay, um, let's just say we have to find out where negative 18 lands from this mic to the preamp to Pro Tools. How else are you going to know that without a test tone oscillator? Something that has a consistent tone. My voice goes up, it goes down. It goes up, it's too dynamic. But this tone is fixed at maybe +4. You have to have a consistent tone to know what a negative 18 looks like here. It looks like here that when I turn this here, I know I'm starting at a point where the noise floor is here and the top end on Pro Tools is here. I know I'm in the sweet spot. You don't know where the sweet spot is if you don't know what the gain structure is on your interface. Even if it's this little Focusrite interface, you don't know. And there's only one way to know, and that's through one of these. I mean, again, like I said, those meters, even in Pro Tools, on the interfaces, they're there for a reason, man. Don't take them for granted because that is what's going to give you the dynamic range you're looking for. Okay? So, let's go. Roger, definitely need to be able to tame the bass with house music. Yes. A really good multi-band focusing. Yes. Here's another one. Miss Pybrand says that he used the Finalizer Plus in the early 2000s. Yeah, that was the light version. I think, like I said, when I was first introduced to it, and that was about that time. Yeah, we were talking about the same point in time, 95 to 2000-ish, when TC Electronic was like hammering. They were making money hand over fist with that 2290. They had a harmonizer. Yeah, they was killing, man. They were making a boatload of money, man. But yeah, but with that in mind, the finalizer came out. I think it was supposed to be like the single answer to everyone who was mixing at the time. If you remember, if you were doing any house music and you had to go to outside mastering house, Sonic Solutions was the deal at the time. So, and if you went to like I think my first one of my projects that I had mastered by Scott Paul, who is Les Paul's grandson. Scott Paul at DB Plus Digital. And Sonic Solutions was the finalizer was the answer to Sonic Solutions, because Sonic Solutions could get inside and really surgically do all of that work, including the gain staging aspect for you. And here comes the finalizer, able to do the same thing. So it's not that it was bad. I think it just took some learning, and it was the learning curve. I think when you're younger, you have less tolerance. You want to be able to yank a piece of equipment out of the box and get to work. But I highly advise against that nowadays. So yeah, the finalizer, that the light and the finalizer was definitely something to have. Let's go down to thanks for elaborating. Your content is fantastic, and I think you're spot on with your insights. Thank you. Electric Owl says that, hey man, listen, bro, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. Each one teach one. That's where I came from. I had a friend of mine that said a long time ago when he was trying to learn some things. He was on the organ, on the Hammond, and he remembered every time he would go to this church and he would walk towards the organist, at the end he would slam the cover down and push all the stops back in so he couldn't see what he was doing. That's being selfish. You're supposed to be able to enlighten one another. And I think that's why I appreciate Al Schmidt so much, because I had gone to a round table that he was there with Bruce Whitty and Ed Cherney, um, Elliot. I think Elliot Schneider was there at the time. Bruce Whitty and Ed Cherney and Al Schmidt, and Al Schmidt came across as one of the most nicest people, man. And afterwards, I walked up to him. I was like, I really appreciate your presentation and all. He was like, listen, man, this is what it's about. Anytime you have anything, anytime you have anything you want to ask me, reach out. Now, I was like a little, spitting kid. I was like, really? But that's what it's about. It's about community, man. I want everybody to succeed. If I got information that I can share that's going to enlighten someone, then I share it. And that's what it gets down to. But the biggest schmuck on that panel was Bruce Whitty, because he was at the height of the I think the Thriller album was out, and he was riding high, boy. He had his nose so far in the air it was not even funny. And I got up to ask a question. He was a real, jerk about it. But it was kind of like borderline, can be interpreted improperly. And at that point, I came to say, it doesn't pay to be a pompous jackass. Even if you've achieved, monumental success, don't be a, what? Don't be a fool. Don't be an idiot. Because success is so fleeting. You know what I mean? You're here today, gone tomorrow in this business. So, the best thing you could do is, live well, share what you know, and hopefully I'm doing that on this platform. So that's my spiel, But I appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad that you're, part of the community and consuming the content. And if you have any questions beyond that, my contact information is on the About page. So feel free to reach out. That's what it's about. Okay, what tone generator am I using? These days, I am using this. Hang on a second. Don't want to fall out the chair. Hurt yourself. Got be running to the doctor. Got to wear a mask and all that stuff these days. Nobody got time for that. Anyway, I am using this unit by Phonic, which is kind of expensive, but it does a lot of things. It's a PAA3. You could tune your room. It's a mic, a calibrated mic, so you could tune your room, and has a frequency, a spectrum analyzer in it as well. It generates tones. It generates pink noise. So you can calibrate your monitors properly. So it's an expensive unit. It wasn't what I started out with. I think I showed you. I have two of these. You see, I ain't even got this. How old this thing? And I ain't even got the back on one of them. Got some duct tape on it. But this thing is like about 36 years old. A Fostex TT15, and this is by Phonic. The company Phonic. So PAA3, Personal Audio Assistant is called, and you can screw it on one of these units. Has a quarter 20 tap on the back, so you can set it up so that it's on a mic stand, and you can aim it in between the speakers, so you could flatten out or find out where you have bumps in the, if you're one of those who has a equalizer between or some sort of equalization software. I think they have built into some monitors nowadays. It allows you to really fine tune the monitors to the room that you're working in. So yeah, a Phonic Personal Audio Assistance 3, PAA3. Okay? And let's go down. So, Mr. Pirate, I was mastering in Miami and pressing at Inner Circles Pressing Plant in Sunrise, Florida. Yeah, man, I kind of, miss. That's the one thing about everything is so, good for you. by the way. But everything nowadays, man, is so, separate and apart, and I would suggest to any young person that's has an opportunity. Greg Calby, who's some of the greats? Gateway Mastering in Maine. There's still some really guys that are doing it. Reach out to Herb Pump Powers. He's in Maryland, I think in DC area. Um, Randy Mahan, a good friend of mine. I've lost touch with one of my very good friends. I haven't heard from him in a long time. Carlton Batts from the Hit Factory. Um, these are guys that know the deal, man. You gotta pick the brains of people that know the deal. People getting out here, like I said, putting all this dilly dally style content up here, talking about this, that, and the third. Reach out to these guys, man. There's a wealth of information. These guys are sitting by waiting for you youngsters to get out here and reach out to them. These are my peers. You know, so these are guys that really know. They're on Facebook. Reach out. Hey, I happen to be perusing Warren Henry's content. Suggested I reach out to you. Yes, reach out to them. You got questions about mastering data, guys? I'm giving you my perspective because I know what I want to hear. I know what tools need to be in the mastering chain. I'm just replicating what I grew up on. But if you want the in-depth, the guts, reach out to Randy Mahan from Sony Mastering. Good friend of mine. Known Randy for over 30 some odd years. We were children coming up in the business. Carlton Batts, we were children. Herb Powers. I don't know him personally well, but I've worked on projects that he was a part of. But these are guys that were like, in the day, they were the guys you went to. Carlton Batts got a wall. Randy and them got walls of gold platinum records. These guys know what they're doing. You don't hear about them a lot because, for one thing, they're African American brothers, and a lot of these guys that I do know, and they're not, they, unless you knew Babyface or some other 90s huge artists that were putting out a certain genre of music, you knew that maybe Ted Jensen, that Sterling sound, he's a white guy. I mean, he would do that certain genres of music, but Randy, Mariah Carey, Luther Vandross, all these guys, these are who the mastering engineers were, so those are the guys you reach out to, wow. Mr. Pirate Brain is dropping bombs, man. We gonna have to talk offline, man, because you're talking about some stuff that we need to talk in detail about, man. I'm interested in hearing about your situation with house music, most definitely, But let's get back to some questions. Roger 1811 says, "I'm assuming that you're performing final limiting in the box. What are some of your favorites?" Okay, listen. This is the deal. When you're mixing in the box, to transition mixing in the box, this is what I would suggest, is that you use a little bit of compression all the way to the final. Of course, the limiter going to the final 2-track master is going to be what's containing the level that you're going to be sending off to streaming. That aside, use a little bit all along the way. Now, in terms of what I'm using in the box, I had, when I bought my HD system, I had gotten a set where I had every plugin. I mean, literally, it was a litany of like the top quality plugins. You know what I reach for all the time? Honestly, what I reach for all the time? The Digi plugins. Because plugins, man, like I said, companies know what they're doing. They're getting y'all strung out on this stuff. The proof is in it doesn't do the job. Plugins are not magic bullets and fixes for something that sounds like doo-doo. You know what I mean? Oh, she can't sing, so I'll use auto-tune. No, she can't sing. That's the deal. In a nutshell, find a better singer. Don't auto-tune it. You know what I mean? But this is the way a lot of youngsters come up. They're building careers on like, tuning people who can't sing. And I know some killing singers in New York. Killing. It was none of this. Oh, I remember the very first time. Um, and she's gone on to be. I'm not gonna call her name, but she's was a very sought after background singer in New York in the 90s, right? And I remember the first time I ever did a session with her, right? We were working on some demo material for um it might have been either Jerry Hutchison or Dana Reed, two very well-known producers in New York. But I remember when people used to fly stuff into the Akai S900, like fly background vocals, and you have the vocalist do the thing one time. Now, the very first time, you know, when I was doing background vocals, you did it. You you did you did it. You stacked them, and then okay, that was verse one. Let's fast forward the tape to verse two. We did all the vocals then. I remember the first time I worked with her. She was like, "Don't you have that thing? That thing?" She kept doing this with her finger. That thing. I'm like, "What thing?" Like the 900. She wanted to just me to sample her vocal and dupe it and all the other and fly the vocals in. Now there was a technique you could do with tape, but if you did it with tape, sometimes it would drift. But Akai comes along and you could do it with a sampler, makes it much more accurate. But yeah, man, I'm saying a lot, but with that in mind, it's just like I think I may have stepped too far away from the point. But what I'm using on the regular is just the digi stuff. You know, plugins are great. They work. I don't think that they're replacements, and there's a lot of evidence on YouTube right now that says that they're not replacements for hardware um, equipment versions of hardware versions of the same type of thing. But yeah, man, I always use the and I have all of them. What's it? The Massenburg EQ, Focusrite stuff, um, TC, um, um, what's the other one? Slate, all that stuff. And you reach for the same thing. So, everyone's mileage may vary, but I think the Digi plugins work just fine. Okay. I'm assuming that you put on what is someone saying? Okay, I got that one. Your reviews are incredible. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you saying for the Electric Owl Works says Al Schmidt is the man. Thanks for the info on the tone generator. Yes, you are welcome. And yes, Al Schmidt is a national treasure as far as I'm concerned. Some people don't get enough of their props, but this guy, man, I have his book, and it's like the Bible. If you get a chance, you should read that book. Read the Al Schmidt's biography, because I think for me as a kid when I met him, and he probably doesn't even remember the time. We was all at the same forum at the time. But the fact that I think it's always what you say to a person that sticks with them, however positively or negatively. And the fact that he said to me, if I ever had any questions, for me to reach out to him, that was what it was about. That resonated with me for most of my career. It taught me to not be selfish. It taught me that what you're blessed to know, you should share. Because you're part of that person's success story. I'm part of the success story for quite a few people that I know that are made a ton of money in this business. Because that's what it's about. You got to know what you're chasing. You chasing the mountaintop. It's not, you're not gonna be there forever. You know what I mean? You got to build your own story. So Al Schmidt is definitely a national treasure. Everyone should read his biography if you get a chance, because that man is a wealth of information. Not just when I was young, giving you his story. He shares all of the technical detail about him coming up, and that's important. That's what's lacking. Being able to troubleshoot in an actual recording studio. I know kids that can't do it. I've witnessed it firsthand. I had an engineer tell me one time, honestly, it was like the most boneheaded thing. For some reason, the DI is not working on the thing. I'm like, okay. Did you change the battery like I asked you? Oh, that type of stuff would have gotten you fired so quick. You know that certain DIs require batteries or whatever the case may be. Um, you have to definitely um be on top of your game. You know what I mean? It's just part of being an engineer, as far as I'm concerned. Love to reach out. Okay, Mr. Pryor, I got you, brother. I got you. I got you, man. Okay, I got you. So, can you please name your current mic and headphones? The current mic. Now, this is a sleeper. I suggest everyone go out and buy 10 of these, especially if you're a drummer. If you play drums and you don't have an Audix i5 in your arsenal for your drums, shame on you. It is like one of the best dynamic SM57 like microphones that is a pre EQ'd curve that sounds sweet on toms. It has an extremely high dynamic range. Uh, it can take high sound pressure levels. It's an absolute gem of a mic for so many reasons. You need the Audix i5 in your arsenal, and they're so blasted cheap. You can find them like for $60 on eBay. You know, so I have like about, I think, 4 of these, and I have like about 4 SM57s. But I'm using the headphones that I'm using are, I'm trying to find a case for them. The Shure SRH40s. Hang on a second. Oh, yeah, the Shure SRH440s, and they sound awesome. They're great studio headphones. I like them. I prefer them. For tracking as opposed to the Sonys. The Sonys have too much top end for me. But these, again, are made by a company that's into transducer technology. It gets back to my original point. You go with the people who know what they're doing. You know what I mean? So quite naturally, they knew how to create a transducer for a headphone that's going to be pleasing sounding. So that's my current setup. And any other questions? So, have you tried any of the Tegla audio analog gear, like their tube summing mixer or cream? This is Electric Owl Works. Bus Comp EQ. I haven't tried anything by Tegla. I have heard of them, but again, beware of height around certain companies. Again, if you're making an investment in if you're making an investment in high-end gear for your studio, be sure that you have an out if you don't like it. Don't buy from someone, and definitely don't buy it off eBay if you don't have a way to return it because you don't like it. It's just that simple, you know. Um, okay, at Roger. Okay, I get challenge. Find the sweet spot between mixes. Electric Owl says it's really a challenge finding the sweet spot between classic old school mixes and loud modern ones. Depends on the genre when you're saying stuff like that. Because I happen to like, I don't know who mixed the group Paramore, like the cut like Monster, but even if it was done in the box, he nailed that one. It's like absolutely killing, you know. But I don't think we're going to ever be able to recapture the days of old unless we return to recording instruments in that fashion. And this is pretty much coming from someone like Bob Clearmountain. I had this conversation with him to a degree at the last AES, and he agrees that the techniques that you use to capture the signal determines, what you're mixing. Listen to stuff by Tony Shepard that he mixes in the box, and Tony Shepard knows how to capture stuff. Bob Clearmountain knows how to capture. I mean, if your front end is not good, your back end's going to be poor. I don't care. You can't polish a turd, as they say. So if it sounds like doo doo going in, doo doo is gonna be coming out. It's that simple. You know, but yeah, the sweet spot between classic old school mixes and loud modern ones, you know, will vary from person to person and from genre to genre. You know, when you listen to stuff that was recorded 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's gonna have you know, um, a different timbre, if you will. You know, even coming across modern monitors, it's gonna have a much different timbre. So you gotta take certain things with a grain of salt. Even these mixes that are done totally in Pro Tools, they just won't sound like stuff from yesterday. For a litany of reasons apparently, but you can't capture. You have to capture it the same way the guys back in the day caught it in order to get into the neighborhood. And I think they did something like that on Reverb, where they wanted to recapture the sound of old school Motown, and they went through the same techniques that the guys were using back then. It wasn't 100%, but at least they stepped into the neighborhood of what it would have been like to record in this with these particular techniques, or this style, technical style of recording. So yeah, so it's always a challenge, and I guess the longer you're in this business, it will constantly be a challenge to find that range. You know what I mean? Because it keeps getting wider. Like I said, now we're mastering outside of the box, and iTunes wants high res masters of 96K or greater. Now the dynamic range of Pro Tools is already very high. So can you imagine? After they start oversampling stuff, 192 turns into 384, and they want greater masters with greater dynamic range. It becomes the never-ending story, if you will. So let's go on. Hi, Warren. John 4:15. Hey, my brother, how are you? Um, he asks, what do you use the R24 EQ hardware on? I see it in your rack behind you. Do you use it? I guess saying in mastering. Yes, I will be. Primarily for mastering more acoustic music, because it has that low mid area, which is a crucial spot as you're transitioning from the bass to the mids. To be able to tame that low mid is extremely important, you know. So to have that added flexibility from that extra band, it's what I'll be using it for, primarily acoustic work. I haven't had any beyond the jazz project that I did recently, any other acoustic. I mean, I had some stuff lined up before this situation unfolded, but I won't be able to use it on any of the acoustic projects until I get back to work. Hopefully post this thing being over. But more on the acoustic side. Whether it's duet, whether it's trio, regardless, as long as it's an acoustic instrument, it will be used in that fashion. Because those being able to tame the low mids is extremely important. Average levels were quite a bit low. This is from Roger 1811. The music sounded better. Now there's this push for loud records I have to deal with all the time. Well, again, I guess to each his own. I listen to all music from yesterday as well as today, because I want to stay informed. But yes, there is a loudness wars going on, but I don't get caught up in that, because I think the loudness wars is all genre dependent. If you're working in a particular genre, it is important to have your mixes competitively loud with what's on iTunes. That's just the business of music. you know that's like me when I had a label back in the day, and if I was competing with window space at a particular retailer, my distributor or the field person would have to go out and in order to have prominence, you would have to purchase window space at retailers, um, and it's the same thing with loudness wars. How do you want to place your music, you know, one one artist versus the other? You can't expect to compete with Beyonce if your mixes aren't as dynamic. The singer could be great, but the mixes aren't as dynamic as Beyonce's. You got to see who your competition is, and that's what whole loudness was. Where that's where that comes in at. Before you just had a single standard, you know, that couldn't be breached because, like, me going back to the vinyl thing, the needle would be skipping all over the place. So you had to stay within that range. Those were audio standard requirements, and they were a very narrow um, amount of requirements that you had. Because you were mastering for cassette, vinyl. Those were the in mediums. You know what I mean? So that's what the consumer was pulling off the shelf: cassettes and LPs. So quite naturally, the requirements going to mastering were much more limited. You know, but yeah. So, Mr. Pirate Brain, I don't know if you're still on. If you are, I will reach out to you because yeah, you were dropping some pretty good ones here today, man. And I'd like to just pick your brain on. And this is for everybody that's listening. I'm going to be doing an outreach series, okay, if you will. I want to know what your setups look like. I want to know what you're working on. I'm geeky like that. I want to know what you're working on. Big, small, it don't make no difference. Let me. I'm gonna have a show me your setup series. So, if you'd like to be a part of that, what you should do is reach out to me via my email or via Instagram or or Twitter. Those are my preferred mediums. Reach out to me and find out how you could become a part of your studio tour. I want to be able to post your studio tour as an encouragement to smaller studios as well. Everybody starts out at zero. I didn't start out with all this stuff. I started out with a Porter studio. For those of you who know what a Porter studio is, So yeah, I want to see what your places look like, man. I want to have that discussion as part of community, if you will. I mean, and in these times, we could find ways of encouraging one another. That's, to me, very important. So, yeah. Oh, the outreach series sounds awesome. Thanks. Yeah, definitely, man. And I don't know if the guys at Shred Shed are watching as well, but I want to get with them. Wavy Wayne is another guy I want to get with. So Wayne.wave, if you're watching, my brother, you're going to get an email. There's another brother from the UK. He pops in occasionally. His name is Gurner Pete. He does some serious music out of the UK that he and I stay in touch on occasion. I want to see what your places look like, man, and we can have that discussion. The email information to reach out to me is on the about page of the of my YouTube channel, so you can use that email, and we'll and get in touch that way. So that's something that I would definitely like to do with you guys. And so let's close by saying this: when you're mastering outside of the box, these are the critical components you need. Some measure of equalization, okay? And let's go to the other slide. Some measure of equalization, high or low quality. Your ears will be the judge. Some measure of compression. High or low quality, let your ears be your judge. If you are entertaining clients, you definitely want to have the best quality that you're going to give your clients. First in the mastering chain is the EQ. Last in the mastering chain is the mastering limiter. Out of the mastering limiter, you're going straight into your 2-track recorder, whether it's a laptop with an interface of some sort, or if it's a DA3000 by Tascam, or the recorder that I Showed you last that the Tascam DR40, which is a high res recorder. It records at 96K or greater. The object is to get that master as high a resolution so that once it gets to your final consumer, the iTunes audience, as well as iTunes, you're giving them a high res file that will not be compromised by the iTunes codec, because they're going to do their own level of compression technology and decompression technology on your file. You don't want to lose the quality and the integrity of that mix. In order to preserve that, you really ought to think about coming outside of the box. That's my preference. You can record back to the session if that's your preference, but the idea is to provide a high res, lossless, well, virtually lossless, I should say, file to the mastering medium, and I mean to the final consumer, which in this case is streaming for iTunes or Spotify. That's the idea here. So if there are no further questions, I would like to say thank you to everybody for tuning in today. It's been a lot of fun. Sorry for the technical glitches with this, so-called, good quality HD camera I was using. But anyway, stuff happens. That's why you should always have a second parachute when you are jumping. That's another thing that's part of my motto. Never jump with one parachute, because you never know. That's why I was saying 2 of everything in every rack. If you can afford to buy 2, buy 2. Luckily, I had this as a fail-safe, my webcam. So I would wish everyone well. Stay safe. Remember, wash your hands. Wear a mask. Okay? Consume your information based on what's going to be best for your family in these times. And like my man Electric Owl says, stay safe, healthy, happy, and take care. That's my wish for you all, and I thank you all for tuning in today. It's been a lot of fun spending some time with you. Don't forget to reach out. We're using the email on the channel. I want to see what your places look like, and we can have this discussion in the future. Okay? Everybody, be well. Peace.